Welcome to our latest Fireside Chat, where we dive deep into the future of sustainable finance, environmental advocacy, and how these two worlds collide to shape a greener tomorrow. Today, we have a dynamic and inspiring conversation lined up with two incredible leaders at the forefront of this movement. Our first guest is our very own Ken LaRoe, the CEO and founder of Climate First Bank, the nation's first FDIC-insured bank founded to combat the climate crisis. Climate First Bank's mission is to enable consumers and businesses to use their finances as a force for good. Joining him is an influential voice in environmental activism, Susannah Randolph, Chapter Director of Sierra Club, Florida. With a long history of environmental advocacy, Susannah works to advance policies and campaigns aimed at protecting Florida's unique ecosystems, while also championing renewable energy, conservation, and sustainable practices. Together, Ken and Susannah will discuss politics, business, and how to fight and win on climate change and environmental issues in tipping point states like Florida. So whether you're passionate about values-based banking, environmental justice, or just curious about the future of sustainability, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I am here with my dear friend, Susannah Randolph, who I've known for, Susannah, 20 years now, probably?
Probably, yeah.
And Susannah is an amazing human being, always fought the good fight, been an advocate for all things good, which is the title of Lauren Dubé, my co-worker, is she's director of all good things. So that kind of ties together. And Susannah, thank you for everything you've done. And then your most recent endeavor, the Sierra Club Florida chapter. You're the executive director of the Florida chapter.
The chapter director, but yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Chapter director. And what a giant, daunting task, which I get accused of all the time too, is why on earth did you start a climate-focused bank in Florida? And it's like, well, it's kind of like you send missionaries into the jungle, and we certainly have a giant adversarial environment in the state. But I want to add that I'm reporting from my place in Western North Carolina, and having driven through Asheville a couple of days ago, can say with boots on the ground and eyes on the river, if you will, that it is a real mess. And we talked about it in our bank board meeting yesterday. What do we do to protect the bank and the shareholders against loss in climate affected areas? What's our concentration? All of those kinds of questions, which are being asked by the regulators, by the way. I don't know, Susannah, if you've run into that, but the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and even the state of Florida is now starting to ask, we want to see your loan portfolio. We want to see it striated by coastal areas and all that. But my response to the board was, I don't know what to do. Does that mean we just stop lending anywhere in the world because everything is climate affected? Because everything is climate affected. Exactly a month ago, no one would have ever said, well, if you make a loan in downtown Asheville, you've got a risk of 100% loss from a natural disaster. So with that as the background, I'd like to just talk a lot about the Sierra Club and what you're doing and what the organization's doing, and then some actual factual stuff for as it pertains to Florida. Would that be okay?
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
So the first slide you got here is, how do you fight and win on climate change in a state like Florida? So that was, I guess, a little bit into my entree. So I'll turn it over to you, Susan, and let you speak to that.
Yeah, and thank you. Your words humble. I'm humbled by your words and recognition. But I have to say that we are just we're humbled by your taking on such a big challenge and being a big dreamer like we are on this, because The only time you're ever guaranteed to lose is when you stop fighting. And so even though these are big existential questions and big things are going on, we have to fight. We just can't lay down and refuse to take action. And Sierra Club has 134-year history of doing that. And we're so excited to see partners like yourself in the finance space and in the business space that are doing the same thing, because we need that, and we all need to be bonding together on that. So, but I think, to the question of like, how do you fight and win on climate change and environmental issues in a state like Florida that has, a governor who deleted references to climate change and signed a bill into law just this past spring, how do you kind of find those opportunities and really go from being reactive to being proactive? I think is one of the things we are always looking for. So, just to give you kind of a little bit of an overview of Sierra Club, on the next slide, we have kind of what the priority issues that we have been working on. So as you can see, top of it is fighting climate change. We have a giant national campaign called Beyond Coal that we've been working with forever, since 2004, in really helping move away from fossil fuels towards clean energy. So we continue to do that work here in Florida, being kind of ground zero for that work. Preserving, protecting, and growing our parks. People probably saw over the course of the summer an attack on our state parks. We really rose to the challenge to fight that. Protecting wildlife through defeating Amendment 2. That's been a big priority for Sierra Club and continues through the election. So if there's one thing you can do between now and the end of the year, it is to vote against Amendment 2. So we as Sierra Club have really staked out our claim on making sure we're protecting our wildlife that way. And then finally, something that's been ongoing for us is really protecting our clean water and preventing really toxic algae blooms. People have seen this across the state in the form of red tide with green slime, that kind of thing. We have ways to really fight that, and we continue to really push the needle on making sure that we're protecting our waterways. That's what's great about Florida. Come to Florida, splash around in our rivers, our springs, our coastal areas. When those are affected, that affects our economy, that affects our revenue, it affects our identity as Floridians. So that is also a very important issue that we've been working on. So, and you can see some of the work that we've been doing. So, and the next slide, I think
Susanna, real quick though, on that, go back. So on those priorities, the 4 priorities, do you change them? Do they evolve? Does it, at what point can you say, okay, we've achieved number 3, protecting wildlife? Do you see what I mean there? How do y'all determine that stuff, and what's priority, and does it change? A whole bunch of questions rolled into one.
Oh, sure. No, I think, and I probably should have started by saying that Sierra Club is a volunteer-run, volunteer-led organization. We have 38,000 members across the state, 17 local groups within the Florida chapter throughout the state, and 140,000 or so, and counting, email subscribers and online supporter action takers. So we really work as a group. Our volunteers really lead a strategic planning session at the end of every year going into the next year. So oftentimes we'll take a look at like, what is, we have defensive and offensive kind of things that we work on. So is there a need to defeat a bill that's going to be better, defeat an amendment like Amendment 2 that's going to hurt our environment? And so if there's something like that, that would probably bubble up to being a really top priority. And then, so we kind of get together and talk about it. Our volunteers are talking about the forever chemicals right now, the PFAS. That has been a really big problem with water quality. So that's something that's starting to bubble up. It really kind of depends on, a kind of combination of criteria on like what is happening now, what needs action, and then where our members are feeling, because they really lead the way, they set the agenda. So. Gotcha.
Okay. And then how does that tie, next question, how does that tie in to the national organization?
Great question. So we do have some national driven kind of programs like the Beyond Coal campaign, because we are working kind of across the country to decarbonize the grid, the electric grid, and really fight climate change. So those campaigns, kind of our national Sierra Club will come in and work with the chapter to help fund those efforts, because it kind of knits us together across the nation. But we have everything at any moment in Sierra Club. We have either a local fight going on for clean water, or a state ballot initiative or legislative issue, and then we have national priorities. So I wouldn't say it's like the cleanest process always, because there's so many moving parts, but what's great about it is that it involves everybody from our volunteers at a local level all the way up to our national staff and everything in between in being really one club in attacking these issues so that we can be as effective as we possibly can with a base of volunteers and supporters that we have.
Got it. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And this is just a little bit about our Beyond Coal campaign. This is a national campaign that we in Florida also are a part of. We annually release a report called The Dirty Truth About Utility Climate Pledges. So we have a lot of utilities that talk a good game on net zero and being, moving towards clean energy, but we really dive down and look at each of the utilities and we grade them. The next slide actually shows some of the Florida utilities that we've graded, where like Orlando Utilities Commission up till now got a B because they committed to closing down the Stanton coal plant back in 2020. The first unit will come down next year. So their grade went up in a big way because they made a commitment to take fossil offline. Duke Energy is continuing to double down on fossil fuel through building gas plants. So they get an F, for instance, and then Florida Power and Light was at an F for a really long time because they were operating coal plants and proposing a lot of gas plants. But more recently, they've retired all their coal. They have stopped proposing gas plants and they have really upped their clean energy commitment to the point of making a real zero commitment and putting more clean energy online. They're just shy of an A though, because they continue to push for the Mountain Valley Pipeline, gas pipeline up in the Mid-Atlantic area. So we are continuing to monitor that. So as long as they're going to continue to do fossil in other places, they're not going to get that A. So we've challenged them on that one. But this gives you an example of how we're really utilizing it.
So does Sierra Club nationwide use the same rating schedule for all the different states? Okay. So I'm just wondering, it seems like the ratings, the metrics should be expanded a little bit, because I know, as an example, Orlando Utilities Commission is pushing really hard to eliminate net metering in Florida, which of course would wipe out a lot of the purpose for doing solar, and it's just a totally scummy, shithead move that the utilities are famous for. And that last ballot initiative was at the last election cycle. I can't remember, where the utilities poured so much money in opposition of solar. I would give every utility in the state of Florida an F. I don't know, maybe some of the cooperatives are actually, but OUC used to be viewed as one of our advocates, one of our white knights, but they're really proving to be every bit as scummy and slimy as all the rest.
Well, I'll tell you, they initially put this out, as you probably remember, back in June. They put this proposal out, and there was such a blowback from not just Sierra Club and your typical environmental groups, but we had these solar installers coming in and saying, listen, you're going to wipe out our business. You're going to wipe out this economic development that has occurred through, people wanting to do more rooftop solar, to move to more solar. And I'll tell you, it was such a huge mobilization at an OUC meeting. If you've ever been to a utility board meeting, almost nobody has been. Nobody goes. They don't even know when it happened. But we had like 50, 70 people show up to this meeting. They were blown away. Mayor Dyer, before any of the board members could speak, said, "This stops today. We are not going to do this. We are not going to move forward today on this." And we stopped it that day. Now they're bringing it back up on November 5th on election day at the OUC meeting. But I'll tell you, Buddy Dyer, the mayor of Orlando, is on that board, and he appoints people on that board. If he says no, they all say no. So if you know Buddy Dyer and Mayor Dyer, like, he needs to hear from people, because the minute he put down and said no, that whole thing stopped. So I think he's very susceptible to public pressure because he's, an elected mayor. So anyway,
the other
just
side
a little
of it
geek out in that.
Yeah, other side of it too is Buddy Dyer is a genuinely good human being. We can't forget that, and I want to put a bunch of accolades out there for Buddy Dyer. But one of my executives met with some executive at OUC, and they did the worst gaslighting, hypocrisy talk there could ever be, and we just went away saying, these people are bad actors. They're every bit as part of the den of thieves as any of the other utilities. So maybe Buddy can save us.
I was going to say, I would share that experience with the mayor for sure.
That's
I think
a
he
good
needs
idea.
to know about that.
Yeah. Hopefully this recording will get out there.
There you go. So, hey, buddy. Mayor Dyer was great on helping us stop the coal plant. He's been a real advocate for this. He was the first to sign the Ready for 100 pledge, moving to 100% clean energy. And then we got a unanimous commitment from the city commission. So I think, as it stands, he's been a big champion on this. But if he says no, that board will say no. So he just needs to do that. And I think he will. But I think you should definitely share that experience with him. But then the other things we are really working on doing both at the state level and the federal level is, as you know, President Biden has approved and got through a game-changing amount of money to put into infrastructure and clean energy. So we are working really hard to ensure that that money gets all the way down to the ground, because as you know, bureaucracy is a real thing and can get in the way of that happening. So we are working with local governments, City of Orlando, City of Jacksonville, other places to really leverage that money. Another big win for us was working with Seminole Electric Cooperative, which includes SECO, the Sumter Electric Cooperative. They were actually chosen as a finalist for the New Era Act, which is the Empowering Rural America program. And this is enormous. SECO and Clay County Electric Co-op were selected, and it's going to enable a 700 megawatt amount of solar and storage for the Seminole Electric Co-op system. That's enormous because they're a very fossil heavy system. And our hope is that that's going to enable them to kind of release or potentially move away from the last coal unit that they have on their system. So anyway, so this really getting that federal money leveraged into the state and into the local level is another big part of it. So
cool. Very cool. Yeah, we have become subject matter experts on the IRA and the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, GGRF, and trying to help leverage those dollars.
Absolutely. Right. Let us know how we can help, because sometimes public pressure is helpful in that, and we're really good at that.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, a very good point. Thank you.
And actually, this next example is an example of our public pressure victory, actually, as folks may remember, over the summer, Ron DeSantis, the governor, and his Department of Environmental Protection rolled out a plan to bulldoze 9 state parks throughout the state to make way for pickleball courts, resorts, and golf courses. And boy, the reaction was crazy. We were at the tip of the spear. I think the next slide shows a little bit of the mobilization that we did across the state. On the left, you can see we literally went right in front of DEP. We had over 300 people show up for a press event out in Honeymoon Island in Pinellas County. Had another 300 people down at Jonathan Dickinson State Park, another 300 people all on the same day, calling on the governor to drop the plans. And as you can see with this Orlando Sentinel headline, his plan imploded. He was actually he dropped plans, at least for now. He said he was going back to the drawing board, but he was at a law enforcement press event in Polk County, and the reporter said, "Hey, have you seen all this crazy, like all this upheaval going on around the state about your plans?" And he said, "Yeah, we're dropping the plans. We're going back to the drawing board." And it was this literally occurred within the course of a week. And we were really amazed to see that when we kind of all come together with the 17 groups, the 38,000 members, the partners in every part of the state, we literally could move a governor who is not known for flinching, not known for blinking on a lot of things. And he flinched big. We flexed hard, he flinched, so I think it gives us a good sense of what we can do moving forward and what can really move the needle. So.
Really, really, really disturbing, that whole thing, that whole cram down, that whole keep it hidden until the last minute. It is a complete manifestation of the den of thieves that is Tallahassee, and it is all a den of thieves. The governor's mansion, the legislature. I mean, this is what happens when you have 25 years of Republican rule.
Well, and I actually failed to mention that they rolled this plan out under the cover of the August 20th primary election. So people were involved in their eyes were on a primary election that was occurring, and people were getting out to vote. People were doing all, and they rolled it out under the cover of the primary election. So it was very, very sinister in how they rolled the plans out and how quickly they were looking to approve it. And they announced, I think, 3 public hearings within 2 days. And then tried to act like they didn't plan that, but they had the venues locked down. It was just it stunk to high heaven from the very beginning. And we did have a whistleblower within DEP who brought it out, and he was fired almost immediately for that. So I know he's in litigation right now, and there's a GoFundMe for him. But without him having blown the whistle and us mobilizing, we would be looking at devastation amongst our state parks. It was really sinister, like you say.
Yeah, of course he got fired. And if it wasn't for one brave guy, this probably would have gotten crammed down. And it's to me, it's a violation of everything. It's a violation of the Sunshine Law. It's a violation. I mean, there's so many. That administration just does so many illegal things, constitutionally illegal. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one of the other bad things they did was put Amendment 2 on the ballot that people will be voting on in November 5th, which is to enshrine in the Constitution the quote unquote right to hunt and fish. But in fact, hunting and fishing is protected already statutorily in the state of Florida. This would put language in the Constitution, which is not needed, that would be so broad and so vague that it could potentially reverse the net ban, the gill net ban that was passed by citizen petition back in the 90s. It could enable things like bear hunts using dog packs, which is unbelievably cruel, to the point where Pam Bondi, our former Republican Attorney General, actually prosecuted dog hunters back in when she was in office in the mid 2000s. And it's wildly unnecessary, unbelievably cruel. And so we, as Sierra Club, have taken on a big investment in defeating Amendment 2. As folks may know, you have to reach 60+1 to pass an amendment. So strategically, it made a lot of sense for us as an organization to take this on, because we need to get to 40+1, not 50+1. So in order for us to win, we have a much lower threshold. Right now, the polling is looking really good on this. We are feeling really good about our investment. And I'll tell you what, if no one else was going to do it, we were going to do it, because we need to stand up for these animals, these wild places. And so we're in. So vote no on 2.
Well, the thing that troubles me is that I'm a guy that's a deep environmentalist. I call myself a rabid environmentalist, and have been at it for 40, 50 years. I didn't even know Amendment 2 was on there till I got my absentee or my mail away ballot. And I looked at the title and I thought, this has got to be put on there by the legislature, by the den of thieves, because it makes no sense. We can already hunt and fish in the state, so there's got to be some nefarious money behind it, and I assume that is the case. Have y'all looked at who's funding it and stuff?
Yes, and that's a great question. So really, what's the big funding behind this is the NRA. And Big Sugar, actually, U.S. Sugar and the Von Hool family are big rolled up in there. Also, there's funding coming in from these Northeast, Southeast dog hunting clubs. So you can see that, somebody had asked me that, said, well, it doesn't say that the dog hunting would be allowed in the amendment. I said, well, if you look at who is putting money into it, they see that would be a potential for it to be involved. So yeah, so the moneyed interests that are lining up behind the yes on 2 are, coming from where you would think it would be coming from. Looking to get guns in more places, looking to hunting in more places, dog hunting, which is, again, unbelievably cruel. So yeah, but great question, because follow the money is always the way you figure out where the agenda really, really comes from.
Yeah, I just had a thought too. The NRA, from the last I've read, has less than 4 million members. And to think of the absolute societal, environmental, cultural damage they've done, why can't somebody like the Sierra Club, that's with millions and millions of members, just go after them? I mean, they need to be shut down. I mean, despite the fact that they're all a bunch of scumballs, and what's his name, the head of it's bankrupt scumball. sociopath, despite all that, which of course doesn't matter in this day and age with MAGAs and everything else. But somebody just needs to shut them down. I mean,
I know that the Moms Demand Action folks are really working on that. We do, within Sierra Club, we do have hunters and fishermen and fisherwomen, I should say, within our ranks. So we do have folks who, do hunt and fish, yeah, exactly. But you're like reasonable about it, where we understand that, in order to continue to be able to hunt and fish, you have to be able to continue to have a wildlife population. I mean, you're talking about with use of language like harvesting, like, you're not going to have a lot left to do any of that. That's why the net ban passed with such a huge citizen-run, citizen-led, all volunteer-led initiative in the 90s, is because recreational fishermen understand that if you start using gill nets, there's nothing left for anybody else. So
that
I think
the CCA got that beat, the Coastal Conservation Association, which are all recreational fishermen. I was really involved in that back in that movement. Man, oh man.
And then, just really quickly, like we have a big effort going on with clean water, like I was mentioning, the prevention of toxic algae blooms. Really, that's about keeping Tallahassee from preempting legislation and ordinances that local governments are doing, because we see a lot of local governments passing ordinances to stop rainy season fertilizer, because what happens is when you fertilize your lawn and it rains, it runs off into the river and spring and waterway coastal area, and it fertilizes red tide, it fertilizes green algae, so you get the green slime outbreaks, you get the red tide outbreaks. So a lot of bipartisan cities across the state and counties across the state have passed these ordinances, but Tallahassee, at the behest of the fertilizer lobby, came in and said, nope, can't do that anymore. We're going to preempt you and tell you that you as a local government cannot ban this. And so we've been working to really stand up for local governments who are taking proactive measures to protect their clean water and protect their value. So that is just a continued fight that it keeps coming back up, but we have kept it at bay to this point. So,
well, and that whole thing, the algae blooms, that's just the tip of the iceberg for the issues that the fertilizers and all have caused. And have you ever read the book Desperation Medicine?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna read it now, though.
I would highly recommend it. It didn't have wide readership, but it was written by a doctor who, I think he was a Harvard medical grad, and he went into rural medicine on the Chesapeake Bay, and he started discovering fishermen started coming into his free clinic with all kinds of weird dermatological issues and respiratory issues, and he discovered it was from toxic algae that was spawned literally by the pig farms on the coast of the Chesapeake Bay, with the effluent going into the bay and create these toxic algae. And so the fishermen, the micro particles would be suspended in the air from blowing off the water, and they're breathing it. And it was he identified 3 algal species, Anabaena, spermatozoa, and one other, that have various levels of toxicity, but one of them was exceedingly toxic. I think it was spermatozoa, and my daughter did a science fair project on it and took water samples from all the lakes in Lake County and found spermatozoa in cylindrospermosis, that's what it was, or something like that. Found it in 2 of the lakes in Lake County, and it's such a toxic algae that it proliferates so rapidly, it blocks out all the sunlight, and it'll kill all the other algae, the good algae and the toxic algae. So there's much more to this that isn't coming out, and it's probably being suppressed by the state. That is exceedingly more scarier than even red tide, which is probably caused by all this too.
Yeah, no, it's a big issue because that when we're fertilizing the wrong things, it throws off the balance of the biological balance that you need to be able to have things like clean water and clean air and healthy people, healthy fish populations, a healthy environment. So yeah.
Yeah, and of course we don't need synthetic fertilizers anyway, ever on anything, whether it's food crops or whether it's the stupid grass in people's yards. But that's another
Yeah,
topic.
we wholeheartedly agree with you. We just are trying to stop the legislature from, and we have many local governments that agree. We're just trying to stop the legislature from coming in and preempting. Preempting is a big thing that they do across the board.
Yeah, it's the free state though. Remember, I just drove drove out of Florida, I guess it was, coming up here, and there's a big road sign paid for by taxpayers, big giant road sign. You are now leaving the free state of Florida. It's like, really, they're spending my tax dollars to put Republican lies on official street signs now. This is great.
I know it's what happened to small government, right?
Yeah.
Local government.
Yeah.
What happened to small government, right?
Right. Yep.
Well, and speaking of preemption, this is like a list of what happened in this past legislative session. That the first thing is, erasing the terms climate change from school textbooks, cutting programs to address climate change, increasing costs by prioritizing fossil fuels over clean energy, the employment regulations, preventing local governments from protecting workers from the impacts of extreme heat, which is another thing we're seeing out of climate change. And then, of course, continued assault on wildlife through the taking of bears, which allows people to kill Florida black bears if they feel threatened, kind of like a stand your ground for black bears, which is unbelievable. It's unfortunately, these are the things we've been trying to keep the door closed on, that we are going to have to just roll over and continue in our fight moving forward. But we are seeing some good opportunities to build bipartisan support that I think will enable us to revisit some of these things that we can then go back and kind of fix on the back end. So, and that I think is the next slide talks about the opportunities. Oh, this is the NOTA 2. But anyway, did you want to say anything on the legislative session?
Let's get on to NOTA 2 because that's a biggie.
NOTA 2. This is exciting actually. The Sierra Club is the only group that really invested big time into NOTA2.org. That's the name of the committee that to ensure that our wildlife and wild places are protected from traditional hunting and fishing methods, which again is that vague language. What is traditional? I think that's going to be something that if we put something that vague into our enshrine it into our Constitution, that's going to open up for a ton of lawsuits and a ton of things that, traditionally, did your grandfather use gill nets? Potentially, yes. And then they can sue to open that up and potentially overturn the net ban. That's a big issue. Dog hunting, claw traps, other horrific methods. If you love animals, you need to vote no on this because you're talking about incredible cruelty to animals. And then again, to your point, Ken, which I think is a great one, which is, following the money is really key here. Governor DeSantis and the legislature put this amendment on. This was not a citizen-led initiative or petition for this amendment. It was by the legislature. And really the money that fueled that was from the NRA and from Big Sugar. So you're seeing folks who, kind of have been always on the other side of smart environmental decisions, on the other side of climate change, on the other side of gun regulations and smart gun regulations are the ones really bankrolling this. So anyways, this is a little graphic that we just know that NOTA 2 came up with that I saw on Facebook, and I was like, oh, let's include this because it was really compelling picture.
Yeah.
So, but
for sure.
But the polling is looking really good on this, and I think the next slide talks about some of the unique things that we saw the NOTA 2 put this out on social media. It's out in public domain, so I can share it with you, which is a TikTok style dance, like meta reels that's really hitting a key demographic that really needs to know not just about Amendment 2, but needs to know kind of all the way down the ballot. When people drop off and they decide they don't know enough about the ballot amendments, all of them, and they drop off and don't vote, that hurts us. That hurts our ability to defeat this amendment. So really, I think it's smart, just observing this from the public perspective, very smart of them to kind of give a guide going down the ballot. This is along the lines, I believe it's the same anyway that I can see from the Democratic Party, that they're really targeting kind of making sure that people feel empowered to go all the way down the ballot and not drop off, which is really a thing. And I will say that just looking at the numbers that I've seen on the public sites, they're closing in on about 500,000 views of the video, which is really great, because that gets us a really big reach for a really big bang for the buck. And then if I would honestly dare you to get the song out of your head. I've seen it a couple hundred times, and it's like it gets in your head, and I wake up in the morning going, no, no, yes, yes, no, no. And so now I know how to vote my ballot amendments. It was kind of cool. So anyway, I thought I'd share this with you because I saw it on Facebook over the weekend, and I was like, oh, this is fun. So
cool. Very cool. Well.
Yeah, and then finally, really, as I mentioned in the beginning, turning these reactive campaign moments into proactive moments. So going from the defensive and going to the offensive, we are at Sierra Club looking we're going to continue to save our parks because it was such a huge movement, and taking this initial victory and fuel the activism around this. So we're first of all going to make our supporters of saving our parks visible through a bumper sticker campaign. It's something people really like to do. It shows community around the effort and the movement to save our parks. SaveFloridaParks.com. It's not live yet, but it will be live very soon, where you can go on and request a free bumper sticker, sign up for our email list, and then get updates as to what's happening. We saw a lot of bipartisan support, so a lot of Republicans, senators. We saw even the Commissioner of Agriculture come on board and say, stop the attack on our parks. So we're actually able to take a broader strategy now using that bipartisan support and turn this reactive campaign into a proactive campaign. So we'll be looking to get pledges from legislators to zero fund any plan that endangers our state parks, do resolutions with county legislative delegations once they start up again after the elections, and then at the start of session, really call the question on the governor. Are you actually going back to the drawing board and coming back forward with another proposal, or are you going to drop it? And so if he drops it, we get victory. If not, we have a huge movement ready to take him on and shut it down again. But I think this really helps us to build that movement, broaden our support, get the word out in a big way. And the next slide, I think you can actually see we have Republican Senator Gail Harrell is actually campaigning. This is a mailer that she sent out recently to her voters in her district, really talking about the fact that she was leading the charge against the attack on our parks. So we're going to call the question on that. If you're going to do that, then we would ask you to zero fund any plan coming out. And then on the other side, we're really engaging across the aisle too. Our Democratic federal candidates, we didn't talk to her. She just happened to post this on Facebook. She's on her way to join Sierra Club to one of our protests. And it was great because that shows us we're getting traction across the board. It gives us that broader base from which to pull to really win our campaigns and maybe open up the conversation once we have these relationships on things like climate change, on things like clean energy, on things like clean water, and stopping toxic algae blooms and protecting our wildlife. So it just gives us this base on which to build.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how many Republican leaders stepped forward on this Save Our Parks thing. I mean, it was just really, so we're going to build on that, not let that opportunity pass us by.
For
and
sure.
Then this just shows the calls to action, really signing up for our email list, following us on social media, and volunteering with the local groups. We have 17 across the state. This is a map of them. And we have, some of our groups are giant, some of them are, smaller and more tight knit, but all together, all told, we're able to execute, advocacy at a really important and powerful level at the local level, leverage all of our collective power at a state level, and then work with our other partners or other chapters across the country on the broader federal things like IRA, clean energy, decarbonization, things like that. So.
Awesome. And so you have, it's not by county, it's by region or something within the state. And then how many members are there in Florida?
We have just over 38,000 members, like dues paying members. And then we have about 140 and growing supporters and action takers who kind of regularly step up to take action on any of our campaigns. So, sometimes it's hard. If you look at the Swanee St. John's group, it's 14 counties. So oftentimes they have trouble getting all together, but they still execute on a lot of really local driven issues through online activism and things like that. So.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you got the calls to action: sign up for email, follow on social, volunteer. Can an individual join the Sierra Club? Just
Mhm.
and so if somebody joins, do they join at the national level and then they get a Florida membership, or do they join at the Florida level? How does that work? I'm just thinking of a call to
They can,
action. So we should have number
yeah, they can.
4 join Sierra Club, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's great. Actually, I should have put that on there, but yeah, no, actually you can do either. So you can, if you go to Sierra Club Florida, let me find that really quickly, but the Sierra Club Florida, I should know this, but I just have it saved on my tab. So sierraclub.org/Florida gets you to our chapter level. And so you can join right at the chapter level. And you can also join at the national level and be a part of it. So we're one club. And it sounds a little funky that way, but you can do either all or any of the above. And then once you are a Sierra Club member, you're a Sierra Club member all the way down to the bottom, all the way up to the top. So you get our magazine, you get updates. We have a really beautiful calendar that we send out to some of our kind of larger like subscribing members. Yeah, all of it goes to really help all the way down to the local level, state level, national level. So you can join sierraclub.org or sierraclub.org/Florida if you want to specifically join the Florida chapter. But either way, you'll get all the updates and you'll be tapped into everything you need to know about how to get involved in any and all of these issues.
Okay. What does it cost annually to be a member?
$35. And
Okay.
then we have a student, I think student or senior level is a little bit lower, like I think 29 or 25, something like that. I think we just updated it. That's why I'm not totally clear on that, but $35 annually makes you a Sierra Club member. And then you do get our magazine, and that's actually a really great publication. And then you also get discounts on our outings, because the other thing the Sierra Club's about is explore, enjoy, and protect. We also do outings. So that's another thing, because we believe that if people are really going to be passionate advocates for their outdoors, they need to be in the outdoors to really understand and be like physically connected to the place they are. We're looking to actually bring on a state outings coordinator to really work with our local groups. Do outings all the time, but I think kayak trips into the Everglades, camping trips. We also do national ones like to the Grand Canyon, to the Grand Tetons, and we do international ones too. So we have folks who go over to the Dolomites in Italy or the Alps in Switzerland and do these outings. So it's really kind of cool. And once you're a member, you kind of gain access to that whole list of outings. So there's the explore and enjoy part of Sierra Club, not just the protect, that is really makes our organization unique.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, let's do the call to action. I'm going to try to get all my coworkers to join.
Oh, thank you.
So you'll get 82 more members sometime soon, and then encourage all of our listeners to take action. The first thing to do, of course, is join. Susannah, thank you so much for the time. How's Scott and the family? Everybody doing good?
Yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, family's doing great, and just having a really fun time doing some work and finding the joy in it while we do it, as we take on the existential challenges. So not getting too caught up in the existential dread, but really learning to explore and enjoy while we protect, which is the really key thing. But I'm so grateful to you, Ken, just for your leadership in your space and the work that you and your staff do. I can't tell you how grateful we are that you are out there doing the really, really hard things that are needed so deeply and so badly right now in this world. So thank you. And being able to share this space with you has just been such an honor.
Yeah, for sure. The feeling is mutual. So thank you so much, Susannah.
Thank you. Thank you to all of your network and your customers and everybody. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.